Okay, guys, I think we can start today's session. And in the last session, we have been discussing about Docker, basics of Docker, and I have given you this tutorial for understanding the basic concept of Docker. Uh, we have uh, we have seen the installation. Then we have seen some of the basic commands using Docker, like we have run an image, okay, and we have worked with that container. An instance of the image is called the container. For example, if you have an Ubuntu image of a Docker, if you run it, you will get the container. Okay. In order to learn Docker, I think you can compare with the virtual machine and Docker. For example, if you install a virtual machine, the installation is actually going to a virtual hard disk, right? And whenever you start the virtual machine, you will get the operating system, right? So similar to that, for the Docker, we have a an image, or you can compare it with VirtualBox, virtual hard disk. Okay, in that image there can be an operating system. It may be lightweight operating system, or like it is having all the applications. Okay, so then you are running it. So a running instance of the image is called the container. Okay, so you may be like using the word container, which is actually the running instance of the image. Okay, so when you work with the container, when you start the image, and when you start working with the container, you will get access to the operating system that that is in the image. Okay, and you can play with it. Okay, so yeah, and we have seen that, and today I just want to show you something. Maybe I can start with these two diagrams for better understanding. Okay, so first I can show you the block diagram of Docker. Okay, so Docker, this is what the Docker having. Okay, so maybe I can explain that. The core part of the Docker is called the Docker engine, or a Docker server, or Docker daemon. Okay, daemon means a background process running in your operating system. Okay, so that is this core part. Okay, so whenever you install the Docker on your computer, you will get this daemon. Okay, and it is always running on your operating system, Docker daemon. And what we are using is the Docker CLI, command line interface. So yesterday, I think if you remember, we have played with a command called Docker, right? There is a command called Docker. Okay, so this is the CLI interface. Okay, so Docker command is a command line, okay, in which we can pass arguments. Like if you want to pull an image, you can use Docker pull. Okay, so that actually going to the server. Okay, so in between there is REST APIs is actually for communication. So Docker CLI, Docker command will send information to server, and server is actually executing all this stuff. Okay, so Docker container is very similar to an operating system. It is having a network. You can configure the network. You can configure a data volume. Okay, a drive. You can mount it, and you can configure the serial port. All those stuff. Okay, so it's very similar to an operating system, but there are some additional configuration we have to do in order to add all this stuff. Okay, and from the CLI interface, you can pull an image, then start an image, then start working with container. Okay, so this is what the uh, Docker software is about. Okay, so the core part is Docker daemon, and what we are working is from the Docker CLI. Okay, I hope that is clear to you, the basic block diagram of Docker. And this is what a workflow, I will say. So we have talked about the Docker daemon, which is a core part of Docker. Okay, Docker daemon or Docker engine, whatever. And on the left side, we have the client. So from the client or the command line interface, you are like giving instructions like Docker build, or Docker pull, Docker run, all these things. And it is going to the Docker daemon. And the Docker daemon is having a list of images locally. Okay, and whenever we run these images, we will get the containers. Okay, and you can see a registry on the right side, okay, which is actually the Docker hub. Okay, so registry means it's a cloud, uh, uh, I mean it's basically the Docker hub or any server which is having the Docker images. Okay, so from the registry we can just pull these images to local to your local computer. Okay, so I think I have shown you the Docker hub, right? So the Docker hub is having a lot of Docker images, and you can also create a Docker repository and you can push an image into it. Okay, so this is one of the custom image that I have created, and there is an explore option and you can search it. Like, these are the official images. Okay, images or the operating system, you can simply pull it. Okay, and then if you pull it, then a copy of the image will be created on your computer. Okay, so if you want to run Python application, you can just pull these. Okay, so like that there are a lot of images present, and that is what we call the registry. Okay, so this diagram is clear to you, right? So if you want to get the images, you can pull it from the registry, and if you want to push some custom Docker images, you can also push it to the registry. Okay, so pulling and pushing. Okay, and also we can start the containers from the images, and we have the CLI interface. Okay, so this is actually the workflow of Docker. Okay, okay, so I'm just minimizing it, and today I'm planning to show you some simple examples for two concepts. One is how to build a custom Docker image for your application. Okay, and then how to run your application using Docker Compose. Okay, so I will explain the first one. So I mentioned that the Docker will be useful for running a specific application. Specific application. So how we can create an image which is having your application and all the dependencies for that. Okay, so that is what this section is about. Docker file. Okay, Docker file, I'm just sharing that. So I am actually referring this online tutorial because it's also useful for you to follow this, because I'm not creating notes, but I'm referring some existing stuff, so you can also follow that later. Okay, so what is a Docker file, and what can we do with this? So Docker file is like a step-by-step instruction format. It's a file which is having step-by-step instruction. And what is this step-by-step instruction? It is like, for example, I just want to run a Python application on Ubuntu. Okay, Python application on Ubuntu. So then in the Docker file, I can just mention I need Ubuntu image first. Okay, I need to select the operating system, obviously, right? So I need to select which Docker image. I have to select the Ubuntu Docker image. Okay, then the Docker image will be available. Then after that, you have to copy your application to this image. Okay, then you can run it, right? So the Docker file is actually the step-by-step instruction to run or to set up your application environment inside a Docker image. Okay, after creating the Docker image, you can just push it into Docker Hub, or you can just copy into another computer. Okay, you can just I mean just share it to some other people, and then if they have Docker, they can just run it from your image. Okay, or if you have the Docker file, anyone can build your Docker image. That is also there. So there are two options. If you have the Docker file, you can build your application Docker image, and you can ship that image, or you can simply send this Docker file and then anyone can build it. So mostly what we are doing is we are simply giving the Docker file. Okay, so imagine you have created a Docker file for a specific application. Then if I get that Docker file, then I can build the same Docker image in my computer. Okay, so that is actually the Docker image is about, Docker file is about, sorry. Okay, so maybe before explaining in detail, maybe I can show you a dummy Docker file. So make sure the Docker file should be named as this. Okay, just a second. Okay, so what we have discussed was about the Docker file, which can be used to build your application. Application in a Docker image. Okay, and you can just ship this Docker file, and then anyone can build your Docker application Docker image and then can run it. Okay, so this is a typical, very basic Docker file. Okay, so make sure you named your Docker file as same as Docker file. The first letter will be caps, and others are like small letters. Okay, so here my objective is that I need to run a shell script on I need to run a program on a Docker image. Okay, so the application, I can show my application. This is my application. Okay, so it's a simple shell script, just like if you just print, or if you just use this command in terminal, for example, it will print hello world application. Okay, so that is the application, dummy application. Okay, and I am planning to build a Docker image which contain this application. Okay, and also I could able to run this application. Okay, so that is the intention of this sample Docker file. So I just copied from the tutorial points. Okay, so I can explain this file first. So in Docker file, there are certain commands that we have to learn. Okay, so if you just go to Google, then just search for Docker file commands, then you will get a reference. Okay, you will get a reference. So let me show you that. So these are some of the commands: run, then from. Okay, so there are many reference for the Docker file. Let me just share with you. Okay, so what is happening is you can use those commands to build your Docker file, or to create your Docker file. Okay, so there is a command called from in Docker file. So using this command, you can include an image, an existing image for your application. Okay, so for my application, I need Ubuntu Docker image. Okay, standard Ubuntu Docker image, the latest one. So I just mentioned from Ubuntu. Okay, so when this command execute, what happening is that it will search for Ubuntu Docker image, okay, locally. If that is not present locally, it will fetch it from the registry, online registry. Okay, so that is this command called from. So this is actually setting the operating system. Okay, and then this is the maintainer. So this is the dummy maintainer Gmail ID. Okay, you can just put the maintainer email ID. Okay, and then if you want to install some dependencies if you want to install some dependencies on this Ubuntu image, you can able to run that. I mean, you can able to install that using the run command. Okay, so basically what happening is that after getting the Ubuntu image, we are adding some some packages like apt utils, build essentials. Okay, so build essential is having the G++, GCC and everything. Okay, so I just put this command for a dummy, I mean just for the demo. Okay, so you are using the run command to install some dependencies for your application. Okay, and I have installed another tool, I mean again using run. Okay, and then I am using like just using a command just to print something. Okay, so these all are dummy. Okay, so my intention is that after selecting the operating system, okay, or after selecting the Docker image, base Docker image, you have to install the dependencies. Okay, then if you want to copy your application into the Docker image, there is a command called copy. Okay, so what happening is that copy test sh dot what it does is that it will copy this file test.sh into the Docker image. Okay, so we have selected the base Docker image, which is Ubuntu, then we have installed the dependency, and then we have copied the application. Okay, so if the application is available locally, then you can do the copy. Otherwise you can clone it using a GitHub from the GitHub repository. Okay, so then it will be I mean running in all the PC. Okay, because the code is actually I mean downloading from the GitHub, right? Currently it is taking from local storage. Okay, so what I'm trying to show is like selecting the base image that you want to run your application, then add the extra dependencies, and then cloning or like copying your application. Okay, so this is a very sample Docker file. Okay, Docker file, and then you will have a confusion like, so what we can do with this Docker file. So if you have the Docker file ready, then you can build it. Okay, so there is a question from Tejas, can there be a multiple from tags? I think we can use only one image, because we are using like one base image, right? And then we are like adding the dependency into it, right? So that is what I am thinking, because in a Docker file the common practice is use a base image, then adding the dependency and running the application. Okay, maybe I can show you a complex example that we have used for a challenge. So this is one example. Okay, so I can just give an example, just give an idea. So from the Noitic desktop full image, okay, which is available in Docker Hub, we are including this. and then we are setting some environment variable for working with NVIDIA graphics card. Then we are installing the dependencies. I think from this we are, these all are dependencies. And now you can see here we are creating a ROS workspace, then cloning the code and doing the catkin make, and also after that also we are like installing the dependencies. Okay, so I think this should be there here. Okay, so I just want to show you like the workflow. Okay, first select a base image, then install the dependencies, then clone the code, then like, yeah, that's it actually. Okay, and maybe we can add a entry point file. Maybe I can explain it while explaining the complex Docker examples. Okay, so first I just want to show you the building of this Docker file. So there is a question: is the n variable added to bash RC? How is n variable reflected inside the container? So yeah, maybe I can explain. So yeah, so the n variable is actually for accessing here. For example, here we have created a variable environment called Jyoti workspace, and I have assigned a value to it, and I am accessing this value here. Okay, so in order to hold a value, okay, it's like a variable. Okay, and we can access that variable using this dollar symbol. I think it is the scope of this variable is only inside the Docker file. Okay, so that's what my understanding. Okay, Tejas. Okay, so so coming back to I mean going back to the basic example. So I can show you how to build this Docker file. Okay, so that is the next step. So I have created a folder called Docker test. Okay, and inside that we have a Docker file, right? So in order to build a Docker file, you can use docker space build. Okay, -t, then my image. Okay, let me try this. I think, yeah, just a second, because there is already images present. So what I am trying to do is I will delete all these images and then I will try to show you. Okay, just delete. I'm just clearing the existing images that is already having. Okay, let me delete it. Actually, there was some command to delete all images at once. I forgot that. Docker images delete all. So actually there are a lot of commands that we need to by heart, but basically if you just Google, you will get. So basically in order to delete it, just copy paste, and you can find all the images got delete. Oh, it's not. Just a second. Okay, let me try to delete. Oh, this is a command. This is for deleting the containers. I will get back to that. This is for deleting the images. Okay, the local images. Okay, so yes, so you can find now there is no existing images on my computer. Okay, now I am trying to build this Docker file. Okay, so I'm using docker space build. Okay, and -t space the image name, and you can add maybe a tag as well, maybe 0.1, like a version. Okay, and dot indicate that the Docker file is here itself, okay, on the same path. Okay, docker space build space dot space hyphen t, the image name and the tag name. So if you see, there is yeah, it's actually, there are 6 step. I mentioned that Docker file is a step-by-step instruction to build a Docker custom Docker image, right? So here you can see it's executing one by one. So first it is pulling the Ubuntu image, then adding the maintainer, and then it is trying to install these utils. So when I tried it, I got some errors first, but when I repeated it, it got solved. Okay, so let me, I mean, you can see what is happening currently. The apt update and installing of this command is going on. Okay, so you can see the steps. Okay, so maybe I can just share this command on Discord. Okay, so it will take some time because currently I don't have any local images. I just deleted everything, so it will take this much of time because we just pulled a new Ubuntu, then we are installing this, so it will take some time. Okay, yeah, so depending on the size of your Docker file, so imagine this Docker file. Okay, so it will take a lot of time to run it. Okay, so after building once, then the base image will be available locally, so you don't need to download it again, but there may be some changes in some other packages. When you install, it will take time. Okay, yeah, so I will be sharing these codes and all, so it will be useful for you to create a custom image, and then you can run simulations. Okay, yeah, maybe I can explain it. So let me wait for some time. Yeah, seems like it is installing the dependencies. Okay, and now it is okay, okay, so I mean, it will take some time, so maybe we can switch to the next concept. Okay, so I mentioned that the Docker file is for creating a Docker image, and you can just give this Docker file to another person, and they can build it. So we can see some example for the Docker file first. Okay, so for example, if I'm just taking rows or yeah, maybe rows, we can just go to the rows repository. Let me check. So I have found a Docker repository for rows, but I'm not sure where it is. Rows.com. Okay, okay, not in this. Let me take OpenCV. Okay, yeah, it is not also having that Docker. Mostly I just want to show you that, like, in most of the repositories they will include the Docker file. Why? Because if you want to build that specific repository or specific application, then you can use the Docker file. Okay, so unfortunately I'm not able to see the Docker file in most of the repository. Otherwise there will be the Docker file here. Okay, so you can simply build it and you can able to run the entire application. Okay, but maybe it may be available with some other. I have seen a lot of packages or repositories having the Docker file, but now I can't able to find any. Let me try to find. Okay. Okay. Industrial training. For that, there is no need of Docker. Okay. Let me try to check in ROS navigation. Oh, that is not also not having. What about ROS 2 navigation? Just a second. Yeah, so you can check here. For the navigation too, you can find a Docker file here, right? So if you open that Docker file, you can find the content of Docker file, and you can find these commands. These are the Docker file commands. Okay, so the same thing, like in order to run the navigation too, which is the navigation for ROS 2, it is using rolling ROS base. So this is using a base image, which is ROS rolling base local, then installing the dependencies, then yeah, you can see the overlay dependency and building it and testing it. Okay, so in most of the standard repositories, you can find a Docker file and you can simply test this navigation using this Docker file. Okay, so that's why Docker files are important. If you create an application and if you put that application on GitHub, then make sure you have a Docker file so anyone can try it out without installing all the dependencies. Okay, so yeah, so it is taking much time that I expected. Okay, so we have seen the Docker file thing, and okay, let me close this. Okay, maybe I can talk about this concept called Docker Compose. Okay, and then in the meantime that may be ready. Okay, let me go to the Compose. Okay, um, again there is an example, but I will show it with a ROS example. So what is Docker Compose? So that is again another concept in Docker. I mentioned that using a Docker file, you can build an image and you can run it. You can run that application that you have built, right? What about running multi containers? Meaning you have to run uh, multiple containers at the same time. Okay, containers means if you run if you run it from an image, then a container will be created. And yesterday you have seen you can create any number of containers, right? So if you want to run multiple containers in a single command, then you can use Docker Compose. Okay, if you are familiar with ROS launch file, that is actually very similar to the Docker Compose. In ROS launch file, what we are doing is we can start multiple programs in a single line of code or single command. Okay, like you can define all the a node name, the program name in the launch file, and then you can run it. You can run that launch file and these program will start. Similar to that, if you want to run multiple containers in a single command, you can use the Docker Compose. Okay, so when you run that when you run the Docker Compose, it will automatically start multiple containers and it will start working together. Okay, again it is very useful while working with rows. Okay, so I will show you a demo using that. Okay, so Tejas is having a question: can we use Docker Compose to create an image like Docker file? So mainly the intention of Docker Compose is like starting an image and then running it as a service, and then yeah, so that is the basic intention. But in order to create an image, I think we can build an image, I guess. Okay, but I need to check, because from my understanding Docker Compose is mainly for creating the container. Okay, not for creating an image. So Docker file is actually for dedicating, for creating the image. Okay, Docker Compose is just for starting the containers and start working. Okay, so yeah, so Tejas is asking, so there is only one method of creating image. Yeah, so that is the standard way of creating an image using Docker file. Yeah, Docker Compose is for like starting multiple containers. Okay, multiple containers and running it together. Okay, so yeah, so that is a basic use case of Docker Compose and Docker file. Okay. Okay, so currently we have built the image, and I have given a name for our image called my image. Okay, so if you just check these messages, you can see all the 6 steps got completed. Okay, and I'm just showing some Docker commands, which is Docker space images. It will show you what are the images present in your machine. Okay, so you can see Ubuntu. Okay, so Ubuntu is our base image, which is available locally now, and we have the my image, which is a custom image, and the tag is 0.1. Okay, there is an image ID and the size is 361 MB. Okay, and obviously you can run it using Docker run. So my image 0.1 bash. So basically we are mentioning my image and the tag here. Okay, Docker space run. For interactive mode we are using -it, then my image colon the tag. Okay, then bash. So bash will be start when we run the Docker image. Okay, so now we got the Docker container, and if you check, you can see the test.sh application, and if you run the test.sh, you will get the hello world message. Okay, so we have successfully added an application into an image, and then you can run it, and you created a container and you run the application. Okay, so now your application called test.sh is working inside a container. Okay, so instead of test.sh, you are going to deploy a ROS package or ROS node. Okay, so the application is going to be running inside a container, not from the real PC. Okay, not from the real operating system, but there is no difference. Okay, if you are using Docker, which is very close to the Linux kernel, so the performance will not be will not degrade, okay, like the virtual machines, which is actually a guest operating system. But Docker will not compromise for the performance, and also we will get the GPU acceleration. Okay, GPU acceleration much better than virtual machines. Okay, so this is one of the best way, one of the best way to deploy your application. Yeah, so imagine you can recreate your application using a single Docker file. That's what we have done today. Okay, so just share a Docker file. Okay, just mail this Docker file to one of your colleague, and he can recreate, he can run your application using this single Docker file. Interesting, right? So there is no, if it is a virtual machine, then you have to like copy all the virtual machine hard disk and everything to another computer, copy to another computer. But for Docker, in order to run an application, we just need a Docker file. Okay, so this is the first advantage of using Docker. Okay, so yes, and now the thing is that if you want to share it, I will suggest you to share the Docker file, but you can also push this image into the registry or the Docker Hub. Okay, so then people can pull it from that. Okay, so that is also another way, like pushing into the Docker Hub, and then people can directly pull it. Okay, so they don't need to build the Docker file, but my suggestion will be sharing the Docker file. That is the best way of doing. Okay, so I think you got an idea about the Docker file and importance of it. Okay, and now I think we can go with the Docker Compose. Okay, so first I think I can show you the an example maybe. Okay, example. So basically I am taking the ROS example, ROS Docker example. It's everything is mentioned here very clearly, and I'm just sharing the tutorial that I'm referring. Okay, for testing the Docker file, for working with the Docker file, there is an example here. I think getting started with Docker, that is a nice example for working with ROS. So we will be using it while discussing with yeah, Docker and all. ROS Docker. I think there's a Docker file tutorial as well. I think I missed it. Okay, maybe I can show you the Docker Compose first. Okay, so I'm just showing the importance of Docker Compose. Yeah, you can just watch what is happening. So it will take some time, obviously. Maybe I can mention what will happen. Basically, we are creating two containers. Okay, let me check how much containers. Just checking. So it's in Docker test, right? Okay, Docker test, Docker Compose. Yeah, so we are creating three containers. Okay, three containers. One is running ROS core, one is running Docker, and one is running listener. Okay, so if you don't, if you are absolute beginner in ROS, maybe I can explain what is happening. One of the hello world example in ROS is called Docker and listener. Okay, so ROS is actually a message passing framework, meaning two programs can able to communicate and exchange data, two or more programs. Okay, so this example, what this example does is that this example, two programs are running from a different containers. Okay, different containers, two programs are running, and then they are communicating. Okay, so that is what this program is about. Okay, so currently I think it started the ROS core. Let me start it again, just a second. After that I will explain what is going on. Okay, let me check it. Let me just stop the compose. Okay, starting it again. Okay, I think now it's working. You can check like we are getting a hello world here. I mean hello, which is publishing and subscribing from the nodes. Okay. Yeah. So just want to make sure it is working. It seems working. Okay. Now I can explain what is happening. So as I mentioned, Docker Compose is an easier method to start multiple containers. Okay. Maybe while working with rows, you have to like you may have different images. Okay, different images. From that you may have to run different containers, and these containers has to communicate with each other. Okay, so this is a typical Docker Compose file. Okay, Docker Compose file. Just a second. So the Docker Compose is actually for like if we have multiple images, you can create containers and these containers can communicate with each other. Okay, in case of rows, this is one of the example for Docker Compose file. Okay, basically a Docker Compose file should be named as Docker Compose, docker-compose.yml. Okay, and again, like the Docker file, there are some commands that we have to, not the commands, just some parameter that we have to understand. Okay, so first we have to like mention the version, then we have to configure the network if you want to, like currently it is in the bridge mode. I mean, I'm not explaining in detail, but just giving an idea. So here is what the important stuff. Okay, here under the service we are creating each containers. Okay, we are using the image called rows kinetic rows core. Okay, and then after creating the container we are running rows core. Okay, so this is one container. Okay, and in the next container what we are doing is we are using the same container, I mean same image called rows kinetic rows core, and then it is actually depends on this container. Okay, so the Docker will be only starting with the whenever the master is available. Okay, and then it is starting this command. Okay, so I just want to show you like this is one service, this is another service, this is the third service. Service means it's actually the container only. Okay, so there are three containers and these three containers are communicating internally. Okay, and each containers are running each command. The first container is running rows core, the second container is publishing a topic called chatter. Okay, and inside the chatter there is hello, and the listener what it does is that it is just echoing the chatter. Okay, so there is a question. So Tejas, can these three containers have different rows version? Yeah. So that is actually our choice. So currently these are using the same rows version. Okay, but you can have different rows version. But if we are using different rows version, make sure the communication will be proper, because there are some incompatibilities that can happen, not for the standard messages in ROS, but if you are using some third party messages and all, there can be some issues with the different versions of ROS, okay, while communication. But you can run any container from any image, okay. So that is the main purpose of Docker Compose, okay. And yeah, so starting multiple containers in a single command, okay. And what was that command for starting a Docker Compose? It's again simple, Docker Compose up, okay. So this was the command that we have used to start these multiple containers. So currently the Docker Compose only have 3, okay. Docker Compose file only have 3 containers, but imagine if you want to start 20 or 30, then you can't do using ROS run, I mean not ROS run, Docker run, okay. So that's why we are using the Docker Compose. And if you do the Docker Compose up, then the Compose will start running, okay. There is some issues while starting. It may be because of, I think, when I start it again, start working sometime. So it's not, I mean, there are some issues, like you can see, sometime it is working but sometime it's not, okay. So the Docker Compose up is for starting all these 3 containers, and Docker Compose down or stop, I think, then these 3 containers will be stopped, okay. So very simple to start and stop multi containers using Docker, okay. So for example, if you want to like run different application, like one container is running navigation, one container working on perception, one container is doing some driver, you can able to do that, okay. But for doing all this stuff, I think you have to expertise these parameters inside the Docker Compose, okay. And also, if you want to write the Docker file effectively, you have to like learn these commands, okay. So it's not very easy, I will say, but you will get a lot of tutorials from internet for sure, okay. And if you check for ROS Docker, you will get some video tutorial as well. It's in YouTube, so there are nice video tutorial, and yeah, so you will get enough tutorial, okay. So just consider these lectures as a very preliminary sessions, okay. I just want to like introduce this concept to you, okay. And while learning ROS, you will see Docker again, okay, but that is specifically using ROS, okay. So before introducing Docker at that time, my plan was to like discuss this basic concept first, and then while discussing ROS, I can directly like using the Docker and start showing the examples using Docker, okay. Okay, so now it's a time for questions. So let me know if you have any question related to Docker file and Docker Compose. I know it's actually like very complex topics, but let me know if you have any question, guys. So if I know it, maybe I can share it now. Otherwise, I will refer and mention to you. Do you have any question, guys? Any questions? It's clear, right? Maybe I can just give an overview of the things that we have discussed today. Like we have started with the block diagram of Docker, the client interface that we are using, then Docker daemon, then the containers image and registry, which is the Docker hub. Okay, then we have started with the Docker file, which is very important. Basically, the Docker files are using for creating a Docker image. Okay, so you can write a Docker file in order to create a custom image for your application, and then in order to run your same application on another computer, people can use your Docker file. Okay, so I have shown you a repository which is having the Docker file, right? So they can, anyone can use that Docker file and build the same setup using Docker. Okay, so that was the Docker file, and I have shown you a dummy Docker file, which is basically like selecting a base image and then installing the dependencies and copying the sample application from the local path. Okay, and then we have work with it. We have ran the test.sh application. Okay, so maybe I can show you that again. So in order to run that, I can use my image Docker image. Okay, so I can see the test.sh file, and also if you remember, I actually installed the htop, which is a process viewer, so I can also run the htop here. Okay, so that's what the Docker file is. And then we have jumped into Docker Compose, which is actually a tool to run multiple containers at the same time. Okay, so the command that we are using for the Docker Compose is docker space compose. Okay, and in order to define these multi-containers, you have to create a file called docker-compose.yml. Okay, and then you have to structure your services of the container. You can give a name for your container or the service, and then you can mention which is the base image that you want to use, then the command that you want to execute, then the network. Here you can see the network, they actually given a name for that, then other containers. Okay, so these are the two important topics that we have discussed today, and after this I think we can conclude the Docker topic. Okay, so this is enough for you to get start with Docker. Okay, and from next week we will be seeing this chapter, which is like improving the portfolio, and if we get time we can start with the mechanical design. Okay, so Tejas is having a doubt. Can you give an example of other networks in Compose? So one of the example that we using here is using bridge. Okay, so if you want to get other network, you can just search for the Docker Compose driver, so then you can able to see different driver. Just a second. So for rows, I think the bridge mode will work, because while working with rows, all these containers should be in same network. Okay, but for other driver, I think we have to like check for it, and I think this example will be only working with the bridge mode. Okay, Tejas, so if you want to, if you want to check any specific network in your mind, then you can just just share it in RDLP discussion group. Okay, so then I can just work on it. Okay, currently for us the important network is the bridge. Okay, because then only these network, I mean these um, containers can able to communicate properly. Okay, so if you're working with a ROS application, I think bridge mode will be enough. Okay, Tejas. Okay. Okay. Yes. uh, okay then, guys, so if you don't have any questions, I think we can conclude it with this topic. Okay, so next week we can see with the portfolio improvement and getting a job in robotics. Okay. So I am actually mentioning this topic in the warming up series because you can start working on your portfolio from the day one. Okay, it's not the thing that you have to do at the end of the course. You have to start working on the improvement like LinkedIn, GitHub, YouTube, website, then open source from the day one. Okay, so that's why I'm giving importance to this topic. So then only you are uh, I mean you will get the opportunities, both research and job opportunities. Okay. Okay then, guys, see you next week. If you have any question, don't hesitate to share it in the DLP discussion group, or you can DM me. Okay. um, so because of the time constraint, we have to encapsulate the important topics of each big topic. Like if you take Docker, there are many subtopics, right? So that's why I'm just mentioning the important one. Okay, so you can find, I will give the detailed tutorials. Okay, so you can refer that as well. Okay, in order to get more information. Okay. Yes, so thank you everyone, see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, sir.